I am Carolyn, 68 years old, and nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I walked into the intensive care unit that day. My son Jason, my only child, was lying there unconscious, surrounded by beeping monitors and IV drips. Alone. No wife by his side. Just hours before I had received that heart-stopping call from the hospital nurse telling me my son had suffered a massive heart attack. Chuki toke chakabant ve kusaklon nyet doi toi hai chatobiet kabant dang sam tu do và bấm subscribe. Nếu bạn đã từng cảm thấy sự fanboy từ những người thân yêu nhất. Life had been relatively peaceful before this nightmare began. After losing my husband Robert to cancer 5 years ago, I settled into a quiet retirement after 35 years of teaching elementary school. My modest home in Asherville became my sanctuary, filled with books and the plants Robert and I had loved tending together. The loss of my husband was devastating, but Jason had been my rock through it all. Jason and I had always been close, but we grew even closer after his father passed. He would call me at least twice a week, and before Amanda came into the picture, he would visit me once a month, despite living 4 hours away. Jason was my pride and joy, a successful software engineer who had built his own company from the ground up. At 42, he had achieved more than Robert and I could have ever dreamed for him. Then Amanda entered his life 4 years ago. They met at a charity gala in the city. She was 38, worked in marketing, and had never been married. Beautiful, charming, and always impeccably dressed. From the first time Jason brought her to meet me, something felt off. The way her eyes assessed everything in my home, the way she steered conversations toward money and possessions. When Jason announced their engagement after just 10 months of dating, I tried to be happy for him, but my mother's intuition was screaming warnings. "She makes me happy, Mom," Jason had said when he noticed my hesitation. After years of focusing on my career, I finally found someone who appreciates me. The wedding 2 years ago was lavish, far more extravagant than anything our family had ever done. Amanda had insisted on a destination wedding at a luxury resort which cost Jason nearly 6 figures. I remembered Robert would have had a heart attack seeing that bill. After the wedding, things changed gradually. Jason started calling less frequently. His visits became rare, maybe 3 times in the past year. When I would call him, Amanda would often answer and make excuses why Jason couldn't talk. "He is in meetings," or "he is resting after a long week." When we did speak, Jason sounded tired, stressed. He brushed off my concerns, saying his business was demanding more of his time. But a mother knows when something is wrong. 2 weeks before my hospital visit, our calls stopped completely. My texts went unanswered. I left voicemails that were never returned. After 5 days of silence, real panic set in. Jason had a history of heart problems, a minor condition he had managed since his 20s with medication. It had never been serious, but as he got older, his doctor had warned him to be vigilant. After 14 days without contact, I made a decision. I would drive to the city and check on my son unannounced. I packed an overnight bag, locked up my house, and headed out, having no idea that I was driving toward a truth that would shatter our lives. The 4-hour drive to the city was filled with anxious thoughts and worst-case scenarios. I kept trying Jason's phone, but it went straight to voicemail every time. I also tried calling Amanda, but she didn't answer either. As I neared their neighborhood, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Jason and Amanda lived in an elegant 2-story house in an upscale suburb. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed both cars were gone. The house had a deserted look about it. Newspapers piled at the doorstep, mail overflowing from the mailbox. I rang the doorbell repeatedly, even though I could tell no one was home. Using the spare key Jason had given me years ago, I let myself in. The house was immaculate, almost unnaturally clean, but had a stillness that sent chills up my spine. "Jason, Amanda," I called out, moving from room to room. Nothing seemed obviously wrong, but something felt very off. The refrigerator was nearly empty except for condiments and a carton of milk that had expired a week ago. With growing unease, I decided to check with the neighbors. The Wilsons next door had been friendly with Jason since he moved to the neighborhood. Mrs. Wilson answered the door, her face shifting from polite greeting to concern when she recognized me. "Carolyn, oh my goodness, you don't know, do you?" she said, pulling me inside. My heart dropped. "Know what's happened to Jason?" "He is in Memorial Hospital. Frank saw the ambulance 3 days ago. They were doing CPR as they took him out on the stretcher." her eyes filled with tears. "We thought someone would have called you." The world tilted beneath me. "What about Amanda? Is she with him?" Mrs. Wilson's expression changed subtly. "I haven't seen her since before the ambulance came. Her car has been gone. I assumed she was at the hospital with him." I thanked her quickly and rushed back to my car. The 20-minute drive to Memorial Hospital was a blur of traffic lights and panic. At the information desk, I identified myself with shaking hands. "I am Carolyn Walker. My son, Jason Walker, was brought in 3 days ago. Heart attack." The receptionist directed me to the cardiac intensive care unit on the 4th floor. As the elevator climbed, I prepared myself for what I might find. But nothing could have readied me for the sight of my strong, vibrant son lying pale and unconscious, connected to machines that kept him alive, and completely alone. A doctor was checking his charts when I entered. "Are you family?" he asked, looking surprised to see someone. "I am his mother," I said, moving quickly to Jason's bedside and taking his limp hand. "What happened? Where is his wife?" The doctor, Dr. Ramirez, according to his name tag, explained that Jason had suffered a severe myocardial infarction, a heart attack, and had required emergency surgery to place 2 stents in his coronary arteries. He was found by a colleague who came to check on him when he missed an important meeting, Dr. Ramirez explained. If his friend hadn't found him when he did, he might not have survived. He is stable now, but still in critical condition. I stroked Jason's forehead, noting how thin and pale he looked. This wasn't just from the heart attack. He had been unwell for some time before this. "And his wife?" I asked again. "Has she been here?" Dr. Ramirez hesitated, his professional demeanor slipping momentarily. "I haven't met Mrs. Walker, no. Perhaps she has been coming during other shifts." A nurse named Maria came in to adjust Jason's IV. After the doctor left, she touched my shoulder gently. "I have been on duty most of the last 3 days," she said quietly. "No wife has been here. Only a friend came the first day, the one who found him and called the ambulance." I felt rage and disbelief building inside me. Where was Amanda? While my son fought for his life, I noticed Jason's phone on the small table beside the bed, along with his wallet and keys, his personal effects. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone. It was almost dead, but had enough battery to unlock with the fingerprint scanner I pressed his thumb to. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of text messages from Amanda over the past few weeks. Messages about how boring Jason had become, how she needed space, and was exploring options. The most recent messages were photos. Amanda on a beach. Amanda at luxury restaurants. Amanda with a tanned, muscular man who definitely wasn't my son. The location tags showed Bali, Indonesia. The timestamps showed she had left the day before Jason's heart attack. In Jason's wallet, I found receipts for enormous purchases, designer handbags, jewelry, 5-star hotels, all in the weeks leading up to his hospitalization, and a bank withdrawal slip for $15,000 dated just 1 day before his heart attack. My hands shook with fury as I put the pieces together. While my son had been sick and then literally dying, his wife had been on a luxury vacation with another man, paid for with my son's money. After discovering the text messages and receipts, I needed to understand the full scope of what Amanda had done. Jason's laptop was in his hospital bag, and I knew his password. My husband's birthday, followed by mine, something he had used for years despite my warnings about security. What I found made me physically ill. Looking at their joint accounts and credit card statements, I discovered a pattern of escalating spending over the past few months. Small withdrawals at first, then larger ones, designer clothes, first-class plane tickets, spa days, jewelry from Tiffany and Cartier. But it was the transactions from the past week that truly horrified me. While Jason lay unconscious fighting for his life, Amanda had withdrawn $50,000 in 3 separate transactions. The most recent was just yesterday, $20,000 from their investment account that was supposed to be for their future children's education. I called Mike Thompson, Jason's best friend since college, and the colleague who had found him collapsed in his home office. "I have been trying to reach Amanda for days," Mike said when he arrived at the hospital an hour later. "She told me she was visiting her sick mother in Arizona, but her Social media showed her checking in at a resort in Bali. Mike, who worked in finance, looked through the statements with me, his face growing grimmer by the minute. Jason confided in me about a month ago, he admitted. He suspected Amanda was seeing someone else, but he loved her so much he couldn't bring himself to confront her. He said she had been critical of him lately, saying he worked too much and wasn't exciting anymore. Why didn't he tell me? I asked, heartbroken that my son had been suffering alone. He didn't want to worry you, Mike said, and I think he was embarrassed. He believed he had finally found the perfect woman, and it was hard for him to admit he might have been wrong. Mike helped me dig deeper, and we discovered something even more disturbing. Jason had apparently been skipping his heart medication for weeks, not because he was careless, but because the automatic pharmacy refills showed the prescriptions had been picked up but were nowhere in the house. The medication cost several $100s a month, not covered by insurance due to a policy gap. She took his medication money, I whispered in disbelief. We also found emails between Jason and a lawyer from 2 weeks prior discussing changes to his will and financial arrangements. It seemed my son had finally begun to realize the truth, but his health had collapsed before he could protect himself. As we sifted through this mountain of betrayal, Jason's phone lit up with a banking alert. Another $10,000 withdrawal was being processed right at that moment. When Jason briefly regained consciousness that evening, the first words he whispered to me were, "I am sorry, Mom. You were right about her." Tears slipped from his eyes before he drifted back to sleep, his hand weakly squeezing mine. In that moment, something inside me hardened into steel. The sadness and shock gave way to a fierce protective anger I hadn't felt since Jason was bullied in middle school. My son was fighting for his life while his wife was spending his money on some tropical vacation with her lover. Mike was still with me when Jason's phone pinged with the bank alert about the additional $10,000 withdrawal. "Can anything be done to stop this?" I asked him. Mike looked thoughtful. "Does Jason have any documentation giving you power of attorney or healthcare proxy?" As it happened after Robert died, Jason had set up both medical and financial power of attorney documents, naming me as his proxy in case of emergency. He had mentioned it casually, saying it was just a precaution since he traveled internationally for business sometimes. I had forgotten about it until that moment. "Yes, I have the documents at home, and there should be copies with his lawyer," I said. "Then we can act," Mike said firmly. "As his healthcare proxy, you have the right to make medical decisions while he is incapacitated. And, with financial power of attorney, you can protect his assets." We worked quickly. Mike helped me contact Jason's bank with the power of attorney documentation. Within hours, we had frozen all joint accounts and credit cards. I then called Jason's company, speaking with his operations manager. After explaining the situation, they agreed to temporarily hold his salary rather than depositing it into the joint account. I also called Martin Shepard, the family lawyer who had helped with Robert's estate. He confirmed that Jason had indeed been consulting with him about changing financial arrangements and removing Amanda from certain accounts. He suspected something was wrong, Martin told me, but he wasn't ready to take drastic action yet. He wanted to talk to her first, give her a chance to explain. My sweet, trusting son, always seeing the best in people, just like his father. By evening, we had secured Jason's finances as much as possible. The bank promised to flag and block any further withdrawal attempts. Jason's investment accounts were locked down. Credit cards were suspended. It took precisely 53 minutes after we froze everything for Amanda to call. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered with a calm, "Hello." "Carolyn." Amanda's voice was pitched higher than normal with forced cheerfulness. "I am trying to reach Jason, but his phone is going straight to voicemail. Have you spoken to him lately?" I marveled at her performance. Not a hint that anything might be wrong. Not a single question about why I might be answering Jason's phone. "Yes, I have been with Jason," I replied evenly. "Where are you, Amanda?" "Oh, I am just at Lisa's place for a girls' weekend." She lied smoothly. Lisa was her supposed best friend. "Is everything okay? You sound upset." "Everything is not okay, Amanda. Jason is in intensive care at Memorial Hospital. He had a heart attack 3 days ago." There was a pause, then a gasp that almost sounded genuine. "What? Oh my God, why didn't anyone call me? That is a very good question, I said, my voice turning cold. Perhaps because you weren't at Lisa's having a girls' weekend. Perhaps because you're in Bali with a man named Tom spending my son's money while he fights for his life alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Then her voice changed completely. You had no right to look through his phone, she hissed. And you had no right to steal his money and abandon him when he needed you most, I replied. The bank accounts are frozen, Amanda. The credit cards, too. If I were you, I would find another way to pay for that luxury resort. Her response was a stream of profanity and threats. She would sue me. She would take everything Jason had. She was his wife and entitled to his money. On and on she went, never once asking about Jason's condition or expressing concern for his life. When she finally ran out of steam, I simply said, I suggest you find your way home. Your husband needs a lot of explaining from you. Then I hung up. She called back 14 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, the hospital called to inform me that a woman claiming to be Jason's wife was calling repeatedly demanding information. I instructed them not to share any details without my approval. By afternoon the next day, Amanda arrived at the hospital with Tom, her vacation companion, in tow. They must have scrambled to book return flights after discovering the money supply was cut off. Mike had alerted me they were coming. Apparently, Amanda had called him in a panic when she couldn't reach me again. Mike, myself, and 2 other friends of Jason's were waiting in the ICU family lounge when they appeared. Amanda stopped short when she saw us all there, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, skin still glowing with a fresh tan. Tom hovered awkwardly behind her, looking uncomfortable. What is going on here? She demanded, ignoring everyone but me. You had no right to freeze our accounts. I want to see my husband. I stood up slowly. At 68, I was a good 25 years older than her, but in that moment I felt powerful in a way I hadn't in decades. Before you see Jason, I think you should explain to us all why you were in Bali while your husband was having a heart attack, I said calmly. And perhaps you can tell us who paid for that trip. Amanda's face flushed. That is none of your business. Our marriage and our finances are private. Mike stepped forward, then tablet in hand. Actually, Amanda, it became our business when you took money that Jason intended for his heart medication and spent it on luxury goods. We have the receipts, the text messages, and the photos. He turned the tablet around, showing a gallery of evidence we had compiled. Screenshots of her Instagram posts in Bali with timestamps, bank records showing withdrawals, matched to purchases text messages she had sent to Tom discussing their freedom once they had enough money. Tom, who had been silent until now, moved forward to look at the screen. His expression changed from confusion to shock. You said you were divorced, he said to Amanda. You said this was your money from the settlement. Amanda ignored him, her face now contorted with rage. I want to see Jason now. I don't have to explain myself to any of you. I am his wife. A wife who left her husband alone while he collapsed from a heart attack. I said, a wife who took the money for his life-saving medication and spent it on jewelry and tropical vacations with another man. Tom backed away from Amanda slowly. I didn't sign up for this. You told me you were single and wealthy. I am not getting involved in this mess. And with that, he turned and walked out, ignoring Amanda's calls to come back. Amanda tried to push past us toward Jason's room, but a nurse blocked her path. Only approved visitors are allowed in ICU, she said firmly. Mr. Walker's medical proxy has provided a list and you're not on it. This is ridiculous. I am his wife, Amanda shouted, causing heads to turn throughout the unit. A wife who hasn't bothered to check on him in 3 days, the nurse replied coolly. If you continue to disrupt the ICU, I will have to call security. Amanda did not back down, her voice rising as she demanded to see Jason and threatened to sue the hospital. True to the nurse's word, security was called. As they escorted a still-shouting Amanda from the floor, I noticed several patients' family members watching with wide eyes. One elderly woman gave me a thumbs up. When the elevator doors closed on Amanda's furious face, I felt no satisfaction, only sadness for what my son would have to face when he fully recovered. But I was certain of one thing: he would recover and he would be protected. Over the next 2 weeks, Jason's condition improved steadily. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, explaining that while the heart attack had been severe, the quick intervention had prevented permanent damage. After a week in the ICU, he was moved to a regular room, and his periods of consciousness grew longer. When he was finally lucid enough for a real conversation, I had to tell him everything. Mike was with me for moral support as I gently explained what Amanda had done: the affair, the stolen money, her absence during his medical crisis. Jason listened silently, tears streaming down his face. When I finished, he closed his eyes for a long moment. "I knew something was wrong," he finally said, his voice weak. "I found receipts for things I hadn't bought. Her explanations never quite made sense, but I wanted so badly to believe she loved me." He explained how his health had been declining for months: fatigue, chest pains, shortness of breath. Amanda had dismissed his concerns, telling him he was just working too hard. When he couldn't find his heart medication, she claimed she had moved it to a different cabinet, but he never found it. She said she would refill it, but somehow it never happened, he said. "I should have just gone to the pharmacy myself, but I was so exhausted all the time." The cardiologist confirmed that Jason's condition had been worsening due to lack of medication, and the stress of his deteriorating marriage had likely contributed to the heart attack. While Jason focused on physical recovery, I worked with Martin to untangle the financial mess Amanda had created. We discovered she had taken nearly $200,000 over the past 2 years, with spending accelerating dramatically in recent months. Amanda made several attempts to contact Jason directly, alternating between tearful apologies and angry demands. When those were unsuccessful, her lawyer sent a formal letter requesting spousal support during their separation and half of all assets in the divorce. Martin's response included extensive documentation of her financial exploitation and abandonment during a medical emergency. Her lawyer's tone changed remarkably after that. As Jason grew stronger, he made some difficult decisions. He would sell the house. He couldn't bear to live there anymore with all its painful memories. He accepted my invitation to move in with me during his recovery period, which would be several months. His business partners stepped up admirably, keeping the company running smoothly in his absence. Friends visited regularly, bringing home cooked meals and much-needed laughter. The nurse who had stood up to Amanda Sarah took a special interest in Jason's case, often checking on him even when she wasn't assigned to his floor. One particularly touching moment came when the hospital's social worker brought in a therapy dog, a gentle golden retriever named Buddy. It was the first time I saw Jason really smile since his heart attack. The dog laid his head on Jason's lap, and my son stroked his ears with tears in his eyes. "Maybe I will get a dog when I am better," he said. "Someone who loves unconditionally." "That sounds like a wonderful idea," I told him, my heart aching for my son who had been so betrayed by the person who should have loved him most. 6 months after that terrible day, I found Jason alone in the ICU. We were sitting on my back porch watching the sunset. He had moved into my guest room after being discharged from the hospital, initially planning to stay just until he found a new place. But we had fallen into a comfortable routine, and neither of us was in a hurry to change things. Jason's recovery had been remarkable. His color was back, he had regained the weight he had lost, and he was following his medication regimen religiously. 3 times a week, he went to cardiac rehabilitation, and on alternate days, he took long walks with his new companion, a rescue golden retriever named Chance. The divorce had been finalized 2 months earlier. In the end, Amanda received far less than she had demanded. The judge had been unmoved by her claims after seeing evidence of her actions during Jason's medical emergency. She was ordered to repay a substantial portion of the money she had taken, though we doubted we would ever see most of it. What surprised us both was how quickly Jason's heart had healed in more ways than one. Sarah, the ICU nurse who had stood up to Amanda, had continued checking on Jason throughout his hospital stay. Their friendship had blossomed slowly during his recovery, and now they had been dating for 3 months. Sarah was everything Amanda wasn't: genuine, kind, and completely uninterested in Jason's financial status. The first time she came over for dinner, she brought homemade bread and asked to see my garden, genuinely interested in my prized tomatoes. I liked her immediately. "You know what today is?" Jason asked as we watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. 6 months since your heart attack," I said. I would never forget that date. He nodded. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, literally and figuratively. I had failed at marriage, my health was ruined, and I felt like such a fool. He reached down to scratch Chance behind the ears. But sitting here now, I realize I have never been more grateful. Grateful? I asked, surprised. Yes, he said thoughtfully. If I hadn't gotten sick, I might never have discovered what Amanda was doing until she had taken everything. I might have spent years in a marriage with someone who didn't love me. Instead, I got a second chance. With my health, with my life, with love. The next evening, we hosted a small dinner party to celebrate Jason's 43rd birthday. Mike and his wife came along with 2 other close friends and Sarah. My dining room was filled with laughter and the warm glow of friendship and family. After dessert, Jason stood up and raised his glass of sparkling cider. I want to thank all of you for being there when I needed you most. 6 months ago, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. What I have learned since then is that the things that truly matter can never be taken from us. Love, friendship, family. He turned to me with tears in his eyes. Mom, you saved my life in more ways than one. You followed your instincts when something felt wrong. You protected me when I couldn't protect myself. And you showed me what real love looks like. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as we raised our glasses. Later, as I was cleaning up, Sarah came into the kitchen to help. Your son is an amazing man, she said quietly. He has been through so much, but instead of becoming bitter, he has become kinder. That is rare. I smiled, thinking of how Jason was so much like his father in that way. He comes from good stock, I said with a wink. That night, as I got ready for bed, I thought about how life can change in an instant. One day, I was a worried mother driving to check on her son. The next, I was fighting to protect him from the woman who had vowed to love him in sickness and in health. Sometimes the most painful experiences open the door to the deepest healing. Not everyone who comes into our lives deserves to stay, but those who truly love us will be there when we need them most. That is the lesson I hope all of you take from my story. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a person who was hurting them? Let me know in the comments below, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story touched your heart. Thank you for listening, and remember to trust your instincts. They are usually right.